My brother once told me I never give anything to family. So I stopped paying the $3,500 mortgage that was keeping his family in their house. Now, everyone's calling me the villain. That sentence has been running through my head ever since the night it happened. We were all sitting around the dining table at my parents' house, passing mashed potatoes and pretending to get along. Out of nowhere, Ethan leaned back in his chair, looked straight at me, and said it with a smirk. The room went quiet. I laughed it off at first, but inside, it felt like someone had punched me. My name is Ava Larkin. I'm 33, a nurse from Columbus, Ohio. I work long hours, sometimes doubles, just to keep up with my bills. I don't live fancy. I don't go on trips. I've been helping my brother, Ethan, and his wife, Melanie, for over 2 years now, helping them so much it's hard to believe they could forget. But they did. 2 years ago, Ethan lost his job at a construction company. He called me one night, said he was behind on the mortgage and might lose the house. Melanie was crying in the background, saying their kids couldn't handle another move. I remember feeling a pit in my stomach. They needed $3,500 by the end of the week. I had some savings I'd been putting aside for a small condo of my own, but I told him I'd cover it, just that once. That one time turned into every month. When he didn't find another job right away, I told myself it was temporary. I even set up automatic payments from my account straight to their mortgage company. I didn't tell anyone, not even our parents. I didn't want to make him feel embarrassed. I thought I was doing something kind. But the thing about kindness in my family is that it's never remembered. My parents always favored Ethan. He was the golden child, the one who had potential. When he made mistakes, they said he was just figuring things out. When I succeeded, it was expected. Helping him was supposed to be my duty as a sister. And when the months stretched into years, I started feeling trapped. Every time I brought it up, Ethan would joke that I was keeping score, and Melanie would say, "Family doesn't count pennies." I tried to believe them. I told myself they'd pay me back when they could. But that night at dinner, when Ethan said I never give anything to family, I realized something had broken between us. He didn't see what I'd done. Maybe he never had. I sat there, smiling, pretending his words didn't sting. Inside, though, something shifted. For the first time, I started thinking about what would happen if I just stopped helping. What if I finally let them see what it feels like when I give them nothing at all? When I think back to our childhood, it's almost funny how predictable it all was. Ethan could do no wrong in my father's eyes. If he broke something, Dad would shrug and say, "Boys will be boys." If I made the same mistake, it turned into a lecture about responsibility. My mother didn't help much either. She used to tell me, "Be patient with your brother, Ava. He's not as strong as you." Somehow that turned into my life's job, cleaning up his messes and making excuses for him. Even when we were kids, Ethan had a way of getting what he wanted. He'd charm people, promise to do better, and then forget about it the moment he got what he asked for. I think I learned early that love in our family wasn't given equally. It was earned through sacrifice. My father praised Ethan's dreams, no matter how unrealistic they were, while my steady efforts were treated like background noise. I got used to being the dependable one, the one who'd step in quietly and fix things. So when Ethan lost his job a few years ago, I didn't even think twice. He called late one night, his voice shaky, saying the company had downsized and he didn't know what to do. Melanie got on the phone too, crying, telling me how scared she was for their kids. She said, "It's just until we get back on our feet, Ava. I promise we'll pay you back." I believed her because I wanted to. At that time, I was finally close to buying a small condo I'd been saving for. It was nothing fancy, but it was mine. I had been working overtime, skipping vacations, and cutting corners for years. When Ethan told me he needed $3,500 for the mortgage, I looked at my savings account and sighed. I transferred the money, thinking it would be a one-time thing. He thanked me, sounding embarrassed, and I remember feeling proud that I could help. But months went by, and the calls kept coming. There was always a reason. Melanie's car broke down, the kids needed new clothes, the bills piled up. Each time, she'd thank me in that soft, overly sweet tone that never quite sounded real. "You're a lifesaver, Ava," she'd say, but she never asked how I was doing. Ethan, on the other hand, stopped saying thank you altogether. It became normal, like my help was expected. When I hesitated once, he laughed and said, "Come on, you make more than enough. It's just family helping family." And just like that, guilt wrapped around me again. I started sending the payments automatically, telling myself it was temporary. But deep down, I knew the truth. Ethan had no intention of getting back on his feet. He'd found his safety net, and it was me. It started small, so small I almost didn't notice. One weekend, Ethan and Melanie had a barbecue at their house. I saw the photos later when our cousin posted them online. Everyone was there, except me. When I asked about it, Melanie said, "Oh, it was last minute. We didn't think you'd be free." Her voice was light, casual, but it stung. I'd paid their mortgage that very week. After that, the distance kept growing. They stopped inviting me to things and only called when they needed money. I'd see Melanie showing off new clothes or jewelry, and Ethan bragging about a new TV or a fancy dinner out. It confused me. If they were doing so well, why was I still sending $3,500 every month? I tried to convince myself maybe they had caught a break, but then I'd see my bank account, and the numbers didn't lie. I was struggling to keep up while they lived comfortably. One evening, I finally worked up the courage to ask Ethan about paying me back. I told him I wasn't angry, just wanted to know his plan. His reaction shocked me. He looked insulted, even angry. "You're really going to act like this?" he said. "Family doesn't put a price on love, Ava." I was speechless. Before I could respond, Melanie jumped in. "Honestly, Ava, it's not nice to throw money in people's faces. We'll pay you when we can. You're making it sound like we're bad people." I tried to explain that I wasn't trying to make them feel bad, but they wouldn't listen. They twisted everything I said until I started doubting myself. That night, I cried in my car before going home. I had worked 12-hour shifts all week, skipped lunch breaks, and given up my own plans just to help them. And now I was being made to feel greedy for asking for what was mine. After that, something in me changed. I stopped talking about money. I smiled and nodded when they spoke about their busy lives. But inside, I started noticing every little thing. The new car parked in their driveway. The vacation photos from a beach I couldn't afford to visit. The way they'd exchange glances whenever I mentioned work or bills. It was like I'd become the outsider in their story, the dull, dependable sister who'd never stop giving. Then one day, I found something that shattered me completely. I was checking my credit report for a loan application, and I saw a debt I didn't recognize, under my name, but from Ethan's address. At first, I thought it was a mistake, but when I looked closer, I saw his signature. My brother had taken out a loan in my name. I sat there staring at the screen, my hands shaking. For years, I'd been helping him because I loved him. But that moment, I realized he'd never loved me the same way back. The call came on a Wednesday evening, right after my shift. I almost didn't answer because I was exhausted, but something told me to pick up. The man on the phone introduced himself as a credit collector and said I was behind on payments for a personal loan. I told him there had to be a mistake because I never took out any loan. He read out the details, my full name, my address, and then an old address that made my stomach drop. It was Ethan's house. I asked him to send me the paperwork. When it arrived, I felt sick. The signature looked like mine, but it wasn't. It was his handwriting, sloppy but close enough to fool someone who didn't look carefully. The date on it went back almost 3 years. All this time, while I was paying their mortgage, he had also taken out a loan using my name. I drove straight to his house that night. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. When he opened the door, I held up the papers and asked, "What is this?" He didn't even look worried. He just shrugged and said, "Oh, that. It's just paperwork. I needed it to get approved for something. Relax, it's not a big deal." I couldn't believe how calm he was. "Not a big deal?" I said, my voice trembling. "You stole my name, my credit. Do you even understand what you've done?" He sighed like I was being dramatic. "Ava, you act like I ruined your life. You make good money. It's not like it hurt you." In that moment, I saw him for who he really was, someone who thought I existed to clean up his messes. There wasn't even a hint of guilt in his eyes, only annoyance that I had found out. I left before I said something I couldn't take back. A few nights later, it was our mother's birthday. I almost didn't go, but I didn't want to cause a scene. Everyone was there, talking and laughing. I kept quiet most of the night, pretending everything was fine. Then, as I was getting my coat, I passed by the kitchen and heard Ethan's voice. "She's so desperate for validation," he said, laughing. "Acts like a saint because she helps people. It's pathetic." Melanie's voice followed, softer but just as cruel. "Yeah, she loves playing the victim. I almost feel bad for her sometimes." I stood there frozen, my hands gripping my coat. They had no idea I was standing a few feet away. Every word hit harder than the last. I walked out without saying goodbye. The The cold air outside felt sharp against my face, but it also felt clean, like the first breath after being underwater too long. That was the night I decided I was done. Done helping. Done hoping. Done being the one everyone stepped on. From that moment, I promised myself I would never let them use me again. After that night, I didn't yell or confront anyone. I just went quiet. Something inside me had switched off, like a light that wasn't coming back on. I realized shouting wouldn't change anything. They'd just twist it until I was the problem again. So instead, I started planning. Late at night after work, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and a stack of papers. I pulled up bank statements, old messages, and receipts. I printed every record of every mortgage payment I'd ever made for them. It took hours, but I didn't mind. For the first time in years, I wasn't acting out of guilt, I was protecting myself. I put everything in a folder and hid it away, proof of what I had done. While I was doing that, Ethan's life looked better than ever. He called one day bragging about buying a new truck. He said he got a great deal on it, and Melanie giggled in the background. The same week, I overheard my mother mention that they were planning a family trip to Florida. I said nothing, but my chest tightened. How could they afford vacations and new cars when they couldn't even pay their own mortgage? Thanksgiving came a few weeks later. I didn't want to go, but my mother begged, so I did. The house was full, everyone laughing and eating, pretending we were a happy family. I tried to blend into the background, but I could feel Ethan's eyes on me. After a few drinks, he started talking louder, telling stories that made him look good and everyone else small. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "You know, Ava never does anything for anyone but herself." He said it like a joke, but everyone laughed. Even my mother smiled awkwardly, like she didn't know what else to do. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. The laughter filled the room, echoing in my head. I wanted to scream that I'd been the one keeping them in their house for years, that I'd sacrificed everything for people who couldn't even say thank you. But I stayed silent. My face burned, my stomach twisted, and I just sat there until the moment passed. When the dinner was finally over, I got in my car and sat there for a long time, gripping the steering wheel. The night was cold, and I could hear them still laughing through the window. It hit me then, no one knew the truth, and no one cared to know. I wasn't a sister to them, I was a convenience. I started the car and drove home without saying goodbye. By the time I got there, my decision was made. I opened my laptop, went to my bank account, and canceled the automatic mortgage payments. My hands were steady. No anger, no tears, just quiet certainty. I was done paying for their comfort. I was done being their safety net. When I canceled the payments, I expected something, maybe a text, maybe a call. But for the first few weeks, there was nothing. It was quiet. Too quiet. I almost thought maybe they had finally figured things out on their own. Part of me even hoped they had. I didn't want to destroy them. I just wanted to stop being their safety net. Then, about a month later, my phone started ringing nonstop. The first call was from Ethan. I hesitated before answering, already knowing what it would be about. His voice was sharp from the start. "Ava, what's going on?" "The mortgage company just called. They said the payment didn't go through." I took a deep breath and said, as calmly as I could, "That's because I'm not paying it anymore." There was silence, then a laugh that didn't sound friendly. "What are you talking about? You can't just stop. The payment's due." "I can," I said. "It's not my responsibility anymore." His tone changed fast. "You're unbelievable," he shouted. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us?" I wanted to ask what exactly they'd done for me, but I didn't. I just said, "You'll have to handle it yourselves now," and hung up. Not long after, Melanie called. She started crying right away, saying I was putting their family at risk, that the kids might lose their home. Her words cut deep, but they didn't sound genuine. When I didn't respond, she switched to anger. "You're so selfish, Ava. You always have been. You like watching people struggle, don't you?" I hung up again. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, more like relief. For years, I'd been trapped in their web of guilt, and finally, I'd stepped out of it. A few days later, I started hearing from my parents. They were confused and worried because Ethan had told them I'd abandoned the family. My father sounded disappointed. My mother was crying. I didn't defend myself. I just said, "They'll be fine," and ended the call. Then the fallout began. The mortgage company kept calling them. Late fees piled up. Word got around that Ethan and Melanie were struggling financially. It became the quiet talk of our small town. I heard through a cousin that Ethan had tried to blame the bank, saying it was a mistake. But soon everyone knew the truth. Even with all that, I couldn't feel happy. Some nights I lay awake wondering if I'd gone too far. I pictured their kids, confused and scared, and it made my stomach twist. But then I remembered every insult, every time they made me feel worthless, every dollar I'd given without thanks. I reminded myself that I wasn't punishing them. I was finally choosing myself. And for the first time in years, I felt free. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Ethan kept calling again and again, each time angrier than the last. His voice was sharp, full of threats, but I stayed calm. Most of the time, I didn't even answer. When I did, I told him exactly what I thought. I was done taking care of a problem that wasn't mine. My parents soon got involved. They called and came by, begging me to reconsider. "Think of the family," they said. "Don't let this break us apart." I listened quietly and shook my head. I had already made my decision. Months of paying their mortgage, covering the fake loan in my name, and being treated like I owed them everything had worn me down. I wasn't going to undo it now. Finally, I called everyone together. My parents, Ethan, Melanie, and even some relatives came, probably hoping I would give in. I spoke slowly, letting each word sink in. I told them everything. I explained how much money I had put into the mortgage, how long I had been paying, and how Ethan and Melanie had acted without responsibility. I even revealed the fake loan I had quietly handled in my name. After I finished, there was silence. The quiet felt heavy, as if everyone suddenly understood the weight of what I had done. My parents were shocked. They hadn't realized the full picture, the sacrifices I had made. Some relatives whispered among themselves, showing surprise and even admiration for me. For the first time, they saw me not just as the one who pays, but as someone who had quietly carried a burden no one else wanted to acknowledge. Ethan, though, didn't apologize. He still insisted I had wanted to do it, trying to twist the truth. I felt my chest tighten, but I didn't let him see me break. Some family members sided with me, others with Ethan, and the tension spread through every gathering. Every conversation now had an edge, every smile seemed forced. Even with all the anger and division, I felt a strange sense of relief. I had finally said the truth out loud. I had set boundaries and refused to be taken advantage of anymore. The family might be fractured, but I knew I had taken the first step toward protecting myself. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was standing on my own, and no one could take that away from me. After I stopped the payments, things quickly fell apart for Ethan and Melanie. The mortgage missed several times, and soon their home was at risk. I watched from a distance, feeling a mix of sadness and relief. I had done what I needed to do for myself, and now they had to face the consequences of their choices. Melanie didn't stay around long. She packed up their kids and left, going to her mother's house. Ethan was left alone, frustrated and angry, but also desperate. He tried calling me, but I didn't answer. I knew he would eventually come. A few days later, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to see Ethan standing there, looking completely defeated. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair messy, and his eyes red from too many drinks. He tried to speak, his voice shaking, begging me for help. I stayed quiet and just looked at him. He stumbled over his words, asking me to help him with the house, the mortgage, anything. But I remembered every time he had accused me of not caring, every time he had blamed me for his problems, and I felt no sympathy for him this time. I let him talk, listening carefully, but I didn't interrupt. Finally, when he paused to catch his breath, I spoke softly but firmly. "You said I give nothing to family," I told him. "I'm just honoring that." I could see the shock in his eyes, the realization that he had brought this on himself. I didn't say more. I didn't explain. I didn't argue. I simply closed the door. Standing there, I felt a sense of calm. The fear and stress of carrying their burden was gone. I didn't feel guilty or mean. I felt free. For years, I had been the one keeping their life together, and now I had stopped. They had to face their own mistakes, and I had to protect myself. As I turned away from the door, I could hear Ethan shouting after me, but I ignored it. I knew it wouldn't change anything. I didn't owe him or anyone else anything. I had done my part, and now it was time for them to live with the choices they had made. I went back inside, closed the curtains, and finally breathed without worry. The house was quiet, the tension gone, and I felt stronger than ever. I had learned that sometimes the best way to care for yourself is to stop caring for those who refuse to take responsibility. It was hard, but it was necessary. And in that moment, I knew I had finally taken control of my life. After everything that happened with Ethan and Melanie, I felt a storm inside me. There was guilt at seeing my family break, anger at how I had been treated for so long, and grief for the family I had hoped we could be. At first, it was hard to breathe, hard to focus. Every memory of the past months came back to me, making me question if I had done the right thing. Then my phone rang. It was my mother, and I could hear her crying before she even spoke. She told me Ethan had moved into a tiny apartment, that he was struggling to make ends meet. My heart twisted. I wanted to feel sorry for him, to reach out and fix things, but I remembered everything he had done, every time he had blamed me, every moment he had taken me for granted. I felt a mix of sadness and frustration, but I didn't give in. I stayed firm. I knew I had to focus on myself. I started therapy to help untangle all the emotions that had built up over the years. I spoke about the stress, the anger, the exhaustion of carrying burdens that weren't mine. Talking to someone helped me see clearly, helped me understand that what I had done wasn't cruel. It was necessary. It was justice disguised as self-respect. With my mind clearer, I turned to my life. I began paying off my debts, one by one, feeling a lightness I hadn't felt in years. I worked hard, saved carefully, and eventually bought my own condo. It wasn't just a house. It was a symbol of everything I had endured and overcome. I could finally call a place my own, a space where I didn't have to answer to anyone else. As I settled into my new life, I felt peace starting to grow inside me. The guilt faded slowly, replaced by a quiet pride. I realized that standing up for myself, even when it hurt those I loved, had been the right choice. I hadn't hurt anyone out of cruelty. I had protected myself and demanded respect that was long overdue. I started to enjoy the little things again. Quiet mornings with coffee on my balcony, working on projects I had put off for years, connecting with friends who truly cared about me. I felt free in a way I hadn't before, free to live for myself, to make choices that mattered to me, not to please others or carry their mistakes. Looking back, I understood that my revenge wasn't about spite. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my independence. I felt strong, steady, and ready to face the future without fear. For the first time in a long time, I truly felt at peace. I had survived the storm, and now I could finally live for me. Months after everything had settled, I got a message from Ethan. He wanted to talk. This time, his words were different. He sounded sincere, even regretful, apologizing for all the hurt he had caused. My first instinct was to listen, so I did. I let him speak, heard his words, but I didn't respond the way he might have hoped. I didn't re-engage. I had learned something important. Boundaries aren't revenge, they are survival. Protecting myself didn't make me cruel. It made me strong. After I ended the call, I turned to my own life. I walked through my condo, every corner filled with things I had chosen, painted, and arranged myself. The space felt like a reflection of me, independent, steady, and alive. I remembered how far I had come, the months of hard work, the late nights saving, the sacrifices I had made to build something just for me. For the first time in a long time, I felt proud, not just of the house, but of the person I had become. I thought about my family, about Ethan and Melanie, about the chaos that had once consumed us. I realized that trying to fix people who never valued you only takes away your own life. I had learned to love myself in ways I hadn't known before. Walking away wasn't abandoning love. It was choosing respect for my own heart. I sat by the window, watching the sun cast warm light across my home. Everything I had built felt like a promise to myself, that I would never again let anyone make me feel small, that I could survive anything with my own strength. The house wasn't just walls and furniture. It was a symbol of all the lessons I had learned, the boundaries I had set, and the peace I had earned. In that quiet moment, I understood the truth. Sometimes the most powerful act of love toward family is letting go of those who never valued you. It doesn't feel easy, and it doesn't feel kind to them, but it is necessary for you. I smiled softly, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. I had finally come full circle, and I was free. Do you think Ava did the right thing by standing her ground and protecting herself, or should she have given Ethan another chance? I'd love to hear what you think, so drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm really curious to know your opinion. And if you want more stories like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story.